The morning started like any other on New Busan. Kim Tae-ho was fixing a broken water pump in Sector 7 when the sky turned dark. He looked up from his work, wiping grease from his hands, and saw something that made his blood run cold. A massive ship hung in the air above the colony. It was bigger than anything humans had ever built. The ship was black and silver with sharp edges that looked like they could cut through space itself. Strange lights pulsed along its hull, and the air around it seemed to shimmer with power. Tae-ho had been an engineer on New Busan for 20 years. He had seen the colony grow from nothing but empty land to a thriving home for 50,000 people. Every building, every road, every power line had been built by human hands. His hands. And now this thing was floating over everything he had worked to create. The colony's emergency sirens began to wail. Tae-ho dropped his tools and ran toward the administrative center. Around him, other colonists were doing the same thing. Children were crying. Adults were pointing at the sky and talking in scared voices. Some people were already packing their belongings. Park So-jin was at her communication station when Tae-ho burst through the doors. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking as she worked the controls. "Tae-ho," she said without looking up, "we're getting a transmission from that ship. They want to talk to Administrator Lee." Lee Min-soo was already there, standing behind So-jin's chair. He was a good administrator, but Tae-ho could see the fear in his eyes. This was not something they had prepared for. Earth was too far away to help, and they had no weapons to fight with. "Put it on the main screen," Lee said. The display lit up with the image of an alien creature. It had gray skin and yellow eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. When it spoke, its voice was cold and emotionless. "I am Commander Vextar of the Galactic Hegemony Fleet. You will listen to my words and obey." Lee stepped forward. "This is Administrator Lee Min-soo of the human colony New Busan. What do you want from us?" The alien's mouth moved in what might have been a smile, but it was not a friendly one. "Want? We do not want anything from you, human. We require this world. Your colony sits on a hyperspace junction that is vital to our military operations. You have 72 hours to evacuate this planet. After that time, we will take possession of this world by force. But this is our home," Lee said. "We've lived here for 20 years. We've built everything you see. Surely we can reach some kind of agreement." Vextar's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass. "Agreement? You speak as if you have a choice in this matter. We have conquered hundreds of worlds and displaced thousands of species. All have either submitted to our will or been destroyed. Humans will be no different." Tae-ho felt his hands form into fists. 20 years of his life. 20 years of 12-hour days and sleepless nights. 20 years of building something from nothing. And this alien thought he could just take it away with a few words. "We are not unreasonable," Vextar continued. "We will allow you to take personal belongings and small equipment. Transport ships will arrive to take you to other human worlds. You should be grateful for our mercy." "And if we refuse to leave?" Lee asked. The alien's eyes grew brighter. "Then you will die with your world. We have weapons that can turn this planet into dust. Your choice is simple. Leave alive or stay dead." The transmission ended. The room was silent except for the sound of people breathing. Outside, the alien ship continued to float in the sky like a dark cloud. Lee turned to his staff. "We need to start evacuation procedures immediately. Contact Earth and let them know what's happening. Maybe they can send help." So Jin shook her head. "I already tried. The nearest human fleet is 3 months away. We're on our own." Choi Da-eun, the colony's chief medical officer, spoke up. "We can't possibly evacuate 50,000 people in 72 hours. We don't have enough transport ships. Even if we did, where would we take them?" "We'll figure something out," Lee said, but his voice sounded hollow. "We have to try." Tae-ho had heard enough. He walked out of the administrative center and went back to his workshop. Around him, the colony was falling apart. People were running around like scared animals. Some were packing. Others were just standing in the streets staring at the alien ship. But Tae-ho was not scared. He was angry, angrier than he had ever been in his life. He stood in his workshop and looked at all the tools hanging on the walls. Plasma cutters, welding torches, magnetic lifters, industrial scanners. Everything he needed to build and fix and create. For 20 years, these tools had been his life. They had helped him turn an empty world into a home for thousands of people. Tae-ho walked to his computer and began pulling up files. Blueprints of the colony, power distribution maps, mining equipment specifications, orbital platform schematics. He had designed most of these systems himself. He knew every wire, every circuit, every bolt. As he studied the data, an idea began to form in his mind. It was a crazy idea, a dangerous idea, maybe even an impossible idea, but it was better than running away. The aliens thought humans were weak. They thought humans would just give up and leave when threatened. They had made that assumption about hundreds of other species, and they had always been right. But they had never met a human engineer who had spent 20 years building something with his own hands. They had never encountered someone who knew every system on this world better than he knew his own face. Tahoe smiled for the first time since the aliens had arrived. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who had just figured out how to turn a toolbox into a weapon. He opened a new file on his computer and began to type. At the top of the page, he wrote, Project Specification, Alien Ship Removal Protocol. Outside, the alien ship continued to hang in the sky. Its crew probably thought the humans below were busy packing their bags and preparing to run away. They probably thought this would be just another easy conquest to add to their record. They were about to learn that some things are worth fighting for, and they were about to discover what happens when you threaten something that a human engineer has built with his own two hands. Tahoe did not sleep that night. While the rest of the colony panicked and packed, he sat in his workshop studying everything he could find about the alien ship. Sojin had managed to record their communications and scan their vessel during the transmission. The data was limited, but it was enough. The alien ship was impressive. Its hull was made of some kind of advanced metal that could absorb most weapon impacts. Energy shields surrounded the entire vessel, powered by massive reactors. The ship's weapons could level a city in minutes. By any normal measure, it was unstoppable. But Tahoe was not thinking about normal measures. He was thinking like an engineer. Every system had weaknesses. Every design had flaws. The aliens had built their ship to fight other warships, not to defend against modified industrial equipment. They relied on their overwhelming power and had grown lazy. After centuries of easy victories, they probably never expected real resistance. Tahoe pulled up the colony's infrastructure maps on his main screen. Fusion reactors that powered the entire settlement, mining charges that could blast through solid rock, orbital solar collectors that beamed energy down from space, atmospheric processors that could generate hurricane-force winds, magnetic ore lifters that could move tons of metal. None of these things were weapons, but in the right hands, anything could become a weapon. The workshop door opened and Lee Min-soo walked in. The administrator looked like he had aged 10 years in one day. Tahoe, what are you doing here? You should be preparing for evacuation like everyone else. Tahoe turned away from his computer. I'm not evacuating. What do you mean you're not evacuating? You heard what that alien said. They'll destroy this place if we don't leave. Let them try. Lee stared at him. Tahoe, I know you love this place, but we can't fight them. Look at their ship. Look at our defenses. We have mining equipment and construction tools. They have weapons that can crack planets. Tahoe stood up and walked to the window. The alien ship was still there, hanging in the sky like a metal cloud. You're right, he said. We can't fight them. Not with conventional weapons. But who says we need conventional weapons? He turned back to Lee and gestured at his computer screen. This colony has 3 fusion reactors that each produce enough energy to power a small city. We have mining charges that can blast through 50 meters of solid rock. We have orbital platforms that collect solar energy and beam it down to the surface. We have atmospheric processors that can create their own weather systems. Lee was starting to understand. You want to turn our infrastructure into weapons. Not weapons, Tahoe corrected. Tools used in ways their designers never intended. The aliens are expecting us to either run away or fight with military equipment we don't have. They're not expecting us to fight with a power plant and a mining operation. That's insane. Maybe. But it's also our only chance. Tahoe pulled up another file. Sojin intercepted some of their internal communications. This isn't just about our colony. The hegemony is moving through this entire sector, claiming worlds and displacing entire species. Hundreds of civilizations have been destroyed or enslaved. If we just run away, we're not solving the problem. We're just becoming part of it. Lee sat down heavily in a chair. Even if your plan works, which is a big if, what happens next? They'll just come back with more ships. Will they? Tahoe asked. Think about it from their perspective. They've been conquering worlds for centuries. Every species they've encountered has either surrendered immediately or been crushed by their superior firepower. They've never faced real resistance. They've never had to adapt or change their tactics. He brought up a tactical display. But if we can prove that humans won't be pushed around, if we can show other species that the hegemony can be beaten, then maybe they'll start to question their invincibility. Maybe other worlds will start fighting back. And maybe they'll decide to make an example of us by turning this planet into a crater. That's a risk, Taeho admitted. But the alternative is letting them win without a fight. I've spent 20 years building this place. Every power conduit, every support beam, every circuit board was installed by my crew or under my supervision. I know this colony better than I know myself, and I'm not going to let some alien with a superiority complex just take it away because he has bigger guns. The workshop door opened again. Sojin and Da-un walked in together. Both women looked tired and worried. We heard voices, Da-un said. What's going on? Lee explained Taeho's plan. When he finished, Da-un shook her head. Taeho, I'm worried about you. The stress of this situation might be affecting your judgment. What you're suggesting is basically suicide. Is it more suicidal than trusting aliens who destroy civilizations for a living? Taeho asked. Sojin had been quiet during the explanation, but now she spoke up. I've been monitoring their communications all day. Taehyun, you need to hear what they're saying about us. She activated a recording device. Alien voices filled the room, speaking in their own language, but Sojin provided translation. They're calling us primitive mammals. They're making jokes about how quickly we'll run away. One of them said that humans are probably the weakest species they've ever encountered. The recording continued. More alien voices, more insults, more assumptions about human cowardice. They talked about humans like they were barely more intelligent than animals. When the recording ended, Da-un's expression had changed. They really think we're just going to roll over and play dead. Every species they've conquered probably thought the same thing about themselves, Taeho said. Right up until the moment they surrendered. But we're not every species. We're humans, and humans have a talent for doing impossible things when we're angry enough. So Jin looked at the tactical displays on Taeho's screen. You really think this could work? I think it's worth trying. The worst-case scenario is that we die fighting instead of living on our knees. The best-case scenario is that we send a message to the entire galaxy that humans don't give up without a fight. Lee was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. What do you need? Taeho smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Time, access to all colony systems, and a crew of people who know how to follow instructions without asking too many questions. Oh, and a lot of coffee. This is going to be a long night, Da-un sighed. I can't believe I'm saying this, but count me in. Someone needs to keep you alive long enough to pull off this crazy plan. Sojin nodded. I'm in too. I want to send those aliens a message they'll never forget. Lee stood up. Then let's get to work. We have 60 hours until their deadline. If we're going to do this, we need to start now. As the others left to begin preparations, Taeho turned back to his computer. He had work to do. Plans to finalize, systems to modify, and aliens to surprise. Outside, the enemy ship continued to hang in the sky, waiting for the humans to surrender. Its crew had no idea that below them, one angry engineer was about to turn an entire colony into the galaxy's most unconventional weapon. Taeho worked through the night like a man possessed. His first stop was the colony's main fusion reactor. The massive machine hummed with barely contained energy, providing power to every home and building in New Busan. But Taeho was not interested in its normal function. He was interested in what would happen if he pushed it far beyond its safety limits. This is crazy, muttered Bae Sung-ho, one of his senior technicians. If we overcharge the reactor like this, it could explode. It won't explode, Taeho said, not looking up from his work. It will create a massive electromagnetic pulse. The alien ship's shields run on energy, just like everything else. Disrupt that energy for even a few seconds and their shields will fail. And then what? Taeho smiled grimly. Then we hit them with everything we've got. While his team worked on the reactor modifications, Taeho moved to the mining operations center. New Busan was built around a rich mineral deposit, and the colony's mining equipment was designed to blast through the hardest rock. The mining charges were small but incredibly powerful, designed to fracture stone and expose valuable ores. We need to reconfigure the magnetic launchers, Taeho told Yoon Ji-hee, the mining operations supervisor. Instead of shooting mining probes into the ground, we're going to shoot mining charges into the sky. HFY stared at him. You want to use our ore extractors as missile launchers? That's exactly what I want to do. These charges are designed to punch through solid rock. They should have no trouble punching through alien hull plating, especially if their shields are down. The launchers aren't designed for that kind of trajectory. We'd need to completely rebuild the targeting systems. Then we rebuild them. We have 48 hours. The work was exhausting and dangerous. Taeho's teams were modifying systems in ways they were never meant to be used. Safety protocols were being ignored. Normal operational procedures were being thrown out the window. But slowly, piece by piece, the colony was being transformed from a peaceful mining settlement into something else entirely. The orbital solar collectors were next. These massive platforms floated in space above the colony, gathering energy from the sun and beaming it down to power converters on the surface. They were marvels of engineering, capable of collecting and focusing enormous amounts of energy. We're going to turn them into weapons? Asked Oh Min-jung, the orbital systems engineer, when Taeho explained his plan. We're going to turn them into very large, very powerful cutting tools, Taeho corrected. Instead of spreading the energy out over a wide area, we're going to focus it into narrow beams. Think of them as plasma cutters, just much bigger. The focusing arrays aren't designed for that kind of precision, and the energy levels you're talking about could overload the entire system. Then we'll build new focusing arrays, and we'll reinforce the power systems, whatever it takes. While his engineering teams worked on the major systems, Sojin was busy with her own tasks. She had been studying the alien communications, learning their language and their protocols. More importantly, she had been trying to hack into their external sensors. I'm in, she announced during one of their brief planning meetings. Their security is good, but they're not expecting anyone to understand their communication systems. I can feed false data to their sensors, make them think we're doing something we're not actually doing. What about their internal sensors? Taeho asked. Those are harder to reach, but I don't think we need to. They're so confident in their superiority that they're barely paying attention to what we're doing down here. As far as they know, we're just running around in panic, preparing for evacuation. Daeun had her own role to play. She kept Taeho functional with a steady supply of stimulants and medical patches. She also treated the injuries that inevitably came from rushing dangerous modifications, burns from plasma tools, cuts from sharp metal, exhaustion from working around the clock without sleep. You need to rest, she told Taeho after 40 hours of continuous work. Your hands are shaking and you're making mistakes. Can't rest, Taeho muttered, not looking up from the control panel he was rewiring. Too much to do. Not enough time. If you collapse from exhaustion, who's going to finish this plan? Taeho finally looked at her. His eyes were bloodshot and his face was pale, but his expression was still determined. Then make sure I don't collapse. Whatever it takes. Drugs, coffee, sheer stubbornness. I don't care. We only get one chance at this. As the deadline approached, the alien ship began moving into attack position. Through their hacked sensors, Sojin could monitor their preparations. They're charging their weapons, she reported. It looks like they're planning to start bombardment exactly at the 72-hour mark. How much time do we have left? Taeho asked. 6 hours. The colony was in chaos. Most of the civilians had been evacuated to underground shelters. But Taeho's engineering teams were still working frantically to complete their modifications. Sparks flew from jury-rigged control panels. Modified systems hummed with dangerous amounts of energy. Warning lights flashed throughout the colony as safety systems tried to cope with equipment being pushed far beyond its design limits. Fusion reactor is ready, reported Sung-ho. The EMP should last for about 5 seconds when we trigger it. Mining charges are loaded and ready, said HFY. We have 37 charges in the launch tubes, each one programmed to target different sections of their ship. Orbital arrays are focused and standing by, said Min-jung. But I want to emphasize that we only get one shot with these. The targeting arrays will burn out after a single use. Solar platforms are repositioned and ready, said another technician. Energy levels are at maximum. Taeho looked around at his team. These people had worked for 3 days straight without sleep, turning their peaceful colony into an improvised weapons platform. They had followed his impossible plan without question, trusting his engineering skills and his stubborn refusal to give up. All right, he said. Let's review the sequence one more time. First, we trigger the EMP to drop their shields. The moment their shields fail, we hit them with the mining charges. While they're dealing with hull breaches, we slice their escort ships apart with the solar arrays. Then we focus everything we have left on their main engines. What if it doesn't work? Someone asked. Tahoe was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, and it was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who had spent 3 days turning construction tools into instruments of war. Then we at least go down swinging. And maybe, just maybe, we give the rest of the galaxy something to think about. Above them, the alien ship continued its final approach, confident that the humans below had accepted their fate. Commander Vextar was probably already planning his victory celebration, adding another easy conquest to his record. He was about to learn that some humans don't know how to surrender. And he was about to discover what happens when you threaten something that an engineer has built with his own hands. The countdown timer on Tahoe's control panel showed 4 hours and 37 minutes. Until the alien deadline, around him, his team made final adjustments to their improvised weapons. Soon the galaxy would witness something it had never seen before, a mining colony going to war. The alien fleet moved into final attack position with all the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. Commander Vextar stood on his bridge watching the human colony grow larger on his main screen. In a few minutes, this would all be over. Another primitive species would be displaced. Another world would belong to the hegemony. Sir, reported his weapons officer. All systems are charged and ready. We can begin bombardment on your command. Excellent, Vextar said. Begin with the population centers. Make it quick. I want to be back in hyperspace within the hour. Below on New Busan, Tahoe sat in his makeshift command center, watching the timer count down the final minutes. His hands were steady now despite 3 days without sleep. Everything had led to this moment. 20 years of building, 3 days of desperate modification, and now a few crucial seconds that would determine the fate of his colony. All systems report ready, Sojin announced from her communication station. Fusion reactor is at 110% capacity and standing by for overload. Mining charges are loaded and targeted. Orbital arrays are focused and ready to fire. Enemy ship is in optimal range, reported Ji-Hai from the Mining Operations Center. Distance is 12 kilometers and closing. Tahoe looked around at his team. These people had trusted him with their lives, had followed his impossible plan when any sane person would have run away. They deserved to know exactly what they were facing. This is it, he said. In about 2 minutes, we're going to find out if a mining colony can fight a warship. If this works, we make history. If it doesn't, at least we go down fighting. Either way, no one can say we didn't try. The timer hit 0. Do it, Tahoe said quietly. Sung-Ho's finger stabbed down on the fusion reactor control. Deep beneath the colony, massive energies that normally powered homes and factories were suddenly redirected and amplified beyond all safety limits. The reactor core overloaded in a precisely controlled way, releasing a burst of electromagnetic energy that spread outward like an invisible explosion. The effect on the alien ship was immediate and devastating. The energy shields that had protected it for centuries flickered and died. Warning lights flashed across Vextar's bridge as his defensive systems went offline. Shields are down, his tactical officer shouted. Some kind of electromagnetic pulse. We're completely exposed. Impossible, Vextar snarled. Humans don't have that technology. He was still trying to understand what had happened when the second part of Tahoe's plan activated. The colony's mining charges, launched by magnetic accelerators never designed for warfare, punched through the alien ship's hull like bullets through paper. 37 small but incredibly powerful explosions tore through the dreadnought's armor, creating holes where there should have been solid metal. Atmosphere began venting from the breached hull. Emergency systems activated throughout the ship as damage reports flooded the bridge, but Vextar's shock turned to rage when he realized what had happened. They used mining equipment, he said, his voice filled with disbelief. They attacked us with mining equipment. Sir, we have multiple hull breaches on deck 7 through 12. Engineering reports that the main reactor is damaged but stable. We're losing life support in several sections, but Tahoe wasn't finished. The orbital solar collectors, repositioned and refocused during 3 days of frantic modification, came online with the power of small suns, beams of concentrated solar energy, normally used to power the colony's electrical grid, sliced through the escort ships like a plasma cutter through sheet metal. The smaller alien vessels, caught completely by surprise, were torn apart in seconds. Their crews had no time to react, no chance to raise shields or return fire. One moment they were part of a conquering fleet, the next they were expanding clouds of superheated metal and gas. "Escort ships are destroyed," reported another officer, his voice shaking. "All 3 vessels are gone." Vexitar watched his fleet die and felt something he had not experienced in decades: fear. This was not how battles were supposed to go. Primitive species were supposed to surrender or be easily crushed. They were not supposed to turn industrial equipment into weapons. They were not supposed to fight back. "Return fire," he ordered. "Destroy that colony." But before his weapons could respond, the 3rd phase of Teho's attack began. Mining drones, loaded with industrial explosives and controlled by mining software, swarmed toward the alien ship like angry insects. They were not designed for combat, but they were designed to carry heavy loads and operate in dangerous environments. The drones struck the dreadnought's hull and exploded, each one adding to the damage already caused by the mining charges. More holes appeared in the alien ship's armor. More systems went offline. More warning lights flashed on Vextar's bridge. "We're taking heavy damage," his engineering officer reported. "Main engines are offline. Weapons are at 50% power. Life support is failing on 8 decks." Vextar stared at the human colony on his main screen. It looked so small, so harmless. Just a collection of buildings and machines scattered across an alien landscape. But somehow that harmless-looking settlement had just destroyed most of his fleet and crippled his flagship. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" On the surface, Teho was asking himself the same question, but for different reasons. His impossible plan was actually working. The alien ship was listing badly, trailing atmosphere and debris. Its escort vessels were nothing but wreckage. The most powerful fleet in this sector of space had been brought low by mining equipment and solar panels. "Their weapons are still functional," Sojin warned. "Energy readings show they're trying to target our fusion reactor." "Then we finish this," Teho said. He turned to Minjung at the orbital controls. "Hit their engines. Everything we have left." The orbital arrays, already overloaded and burning out from their previous attacks, focused their remaining energy on the alien ship's propulsion systems. The concentrated solar beams, hot enough to melt steel, carved through the dreadnought's engine compartments like knives through butter. The alien ship shuddered and went dark. Its engines died. Its weapons fell silent. What had been a symbol of unstoppable power just minutes before was now a crippled hulk, drifting in space above the human colony. Vextar stood on his darkened bridge, surrounded by sparking consoles and the smell of burning circuits. Half his crew was dead or injured. His ship was powerless and dead in space. His fleet was destroyed, and it had all been done by a species he had considered barely more intelligent than animals. "Sir," his communications officer said weakly, "we're receiving a transmission from the human colony." "Put it through," Vextar said. He needed to understand what had happened. He needed to know how creatures he had dismissed as primitive had managed to do the impossible. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of a human male. He looked tired and dirty, with grease stains on his clothes and exhaustion in his eyes. But there was something else there too: satisfaction. "The satisfaction of a job well done. Commander Vextar," the human said. "This is Engineer Kim Tae-ho of New Busan Colony. I believe you wanted to discuss our evacuation." Vextar could only stare. This was the being who had destroyed his fleet? This tired-looking human with oil under his fingernails? "You used construction equipment," Vextar said, still trying to understand. "You turned industrial tools into weapons." Tae-ho nodded. "That's what engineers do. We solve problems with whatever tools we have available. Your problem was that you threatened our home. Our solution was to teach you better manners." "This is impossible. No species has ever been human," Tae-ho interrupted. "You made the mistake of thinking we would react like all the others. You thought we would run away or surrender when faced with superior firepower. But you forgot something important, what?" Tae-ho smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. "You forgot that humans are very good at breaking things when we put our minds to it. Especially things that belong to people who threaten our families." The transmission ended, leaving Vexitar alone with his thoughts and his crippled ship. Around him, his crew worked frantically to restore basic life support and communications, but the commander of the once mighty fleet could only think about what he would tell his superiors. How do you explain that the most advanced military force in the galaxy had been defeated by mining equipment? The crippled alien ship drifted silently above New Busan, its hull scarred with blast holes and its engines cold and dead. Inside the dreadnought, Commander Vextar struggled to maintain order among his surviving crew. Emergency power flickered throughout the ship, and the air tasted of smoke and fear. On the surface, Taeho stood in his command center, looking at the displays that showed the enemy vessel's condition. The ship was badly damaged but still intact. More importantly, its communication systems were still functional, and Taeho had plans for those systems. "So-Jin," he said, "are you still connected to their communications array?" So-Jin nodded, her fingers dancing across her control panels. "I'm in their external systems. They haven't changed their security codes since the attack. I think they're too busy trying to keep their ship from falling apart." "Good. I want you to patch me into all hegemony military frequencies. Every ship, every base, every command center. I want the entire galaxy to hear what I have to say." Daeun looked concerned. "Taeho, are you sure that's wise? If you make them angry, they might send an entire fleet to destroy us." "They were already planning to destroy us," Taeho replied. "At least this way we get to choose what our last words will be." While So-Jin worked on establishing the connection, Taeho thought about what he wanted to say. For centuries, the hegemony had conquered world after world, displacing entire species without consequence. They had never faced real resistance because their victims had always been isolated, fighting alone against overwhelming odds. But now, for the first time, someone had fought back and won. And Taeho intended to make sure everyone knew about it. "Connection established," So-Jin announced. "You're broadcasting on all hegemony military frequencies. The signal is strong enough to reach every ship and station within 50 light years." Taeho activated the main communications array, boosting the signal with power from the colony's fusion reactors. When he spoke, his voice would be heard across the galaxy. "Attention all hegemony forces," he began, speaking in perfect hegemony standard that So-Jin had taught him during their preparations. "This is Engineer Kim Taeho of the human colony New Busan. I'm broadcasting from orbit around the world you just tried to conquer." On his screen, he could see activity aboard the alien ship as they tried to cut his connection. But So-Jin had done her work well. The signal was locked in and amplified beyond their ability to stop it. 3 days ago, Commander Vexitar of your fleet arrived at our world with an ultimatum. He told us we had 72 hours to evacuate our homes so that your empire could claim our planet. He expected us to run away like all the other species you've conquered. He was wrong." Taeho paused, looking at the data displays that showed the condition of the alien fleet. "Your mighty dreadnought now floats powerless above our colony. Your escort ships are debris fields. Your crew is trapped aboard a crippled vessel, dependent on our mercy for their survival. And you want to know how this happened? Let me explain." On ships and stations throughout hegemony space, communication officers scrambled to locate the source of the transmission. Military commanders demanded explanations that their subordinates could not provide. How was a human colony broadcasting on secure military frequencies? "You see," Taeho continued, "you made a fundamental error in your assumptions about humanity. You thought we were just another primitive species that would surrender at the first sign of superior firepower. You thought we would panic and run when threatened. You thought wrong." He gestured toward the window of his command center where the damaged alien ship was visible against the stars. "Your fleet was destroyed by mining equipment. Your shields were brought down by a power plant. Your escort ships were cut apart by solar collectors. Your hull was breached by ore extractors. You were defeated by tools designed for construction and industry, operated by people whose only training was in building things, not destroying them. Aboard the alien ship," Vextar listened to the transmission with growing horror. Every word was being broadcast to the entire hegemony military. His defeat would not be a secret that could be covered up or explained away. Everyone would know that the invincible fleet had been beaten by construction workers. "But here's the really important part," Taeho said, his voice carrying across the galaxy. "We're not soldiers. We're not a military force. We're engineers and miners and farmers and teachers. We're ordinary people who just wanted to live in peace on the world we built with our own hands. And when you threatened to take that away from us, we did what humans do best. We improvised, we adapted, and we overcame." The transmission was reaching hundreds of worlds now, carried by relay stations throughout hegemony space. On planets where conquered species lived under alien rule, People stopped what they were doing to listen to the impossible message. So here's my message to every species that has been displaced by the hegemony. Taeho continued. You don't have to accept this. You don't have to surrender your homes just because someone with bigger guns tells you to. You have tools. You have knowledge. You have the will to fight for what's yours. That's all you need. He leaned closer to the microphone and his voice took on a harder edge. And here's my message to the hegemony leadership. We just proved that your fleets can be beaten. We proved that your superior technology means nothing when faced with determination and ingenuity. You've spent centuries conquering species that fought you on your terms using your rules. But humans don't play by your rules. On the bridge of his crippled ship, Bextar felt something he had never experienced before. Shame. Not just for his defeat, but for the centuries of easy victories over helpless opponents. Had they all been like this? Had they all been people just trying to protect their homes? From now on, Taeho said, every world you threaten will know that the mighty hegemony fleet can be stopped by a mining colony. Every species you try to displace will remember that humans fought back with construction equipment and won. Your age of easy conquests is over. The signal was reaching the edges of hegemony space now, carried by automated relay systems that had been designed to ensure that military communications could reach anywhere in the galaxy. Taeho's message was being heard on thousands of worlds by millions of beings. But I'm not unreasonable, Taeho added, his voice taking on a reasonable tone. I don't want to see more unnecessary violence. So here's my proposal. Stop trying to steal people's homes and we'll stop showing them how to break your ships with farming equipment. Start asking nicely instead of demanding surrender. And you might find that some species are willing to negotiate. Treat other beings with respect and they might treat you with respect in return. He paused for a moment, then delivered his final words. This is Engineer Kim Taeho, broadcasting from New Busan Colony, the world that your fleet failed to conquer. We're just ordinary humans with ordinary tools, but we have something your empire has forgotten. The knowledge that some things are worth fighting for. Remember that the next time you decide to threaten someone's home. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, the silence that followed was deafening. On hegemony ships and stations, officers stared at their communication displays in shock. On conquered worlds, oppressed species began to whisper among themselves about the humans who had fought back. On the hegemony capital world, emergency meetings were called as leaders tried to understand how a mining colony had just humiliated their entire military. But in the command center of New Busan Colony, Taeho simply turned off the transmitter and went back to work. There were systems to repair, damage to assess, and preparations to make for whatever came next. He had sent his message to the galaxy. Now it was time to see what the galaxy would do with it. Above them, the alien ship continued to drift, its crew working frantically to restore power and communications. They would eventually repair their vessel and limp back to hegemony space. But they would carry with them the knowledge that the age of easy conquest was over. The galaxy had heard the message of New Busan. Now every world would know that sometimes fighting back was possible. And sometimes the tools of peace could become the instruments of war.